Hello, wonderful people. This has been requested 4 times this week by different people. And to be fair, it's something I've not yet done a specific video on, yet it is an incredibly prevalent symptom of perimenopause and menopause, anxiety, and how you can manage it. Now, the good news is, and I hear this a lot, is, oh, I've always been very anxious. I'm wired like that. My mum was like that. Sure, there are genetic predispositions to anxiety, but pretty much like any genetic predisposition, you have the power over it. And in this module, I'm going to show you which tools you can apply, how and when to dramatically decrease anxiety. So let's start at the top. Let's dive in. Firstly, this is the center of our wheel. We're saying bye to anxiety. One of the first things to address, and probably the biggest lever for you to pull, is to do a Dutch test. Dried urine for total comprehensive hormones if you haven't done already. Why? It's all about getting your estrogen balanced to your progesterone. So we want estrogen balanced nicely to progesterone. This is key. And if you actually look at the symptoms of estrogen lack and estrogen dominance, both of them can come with anxiety and mood swings. And ultimately, it's about how they're relating to progesterone. So here's a really important nuance, is when you've got your Dutch test and you've employed whichever dosage strategy that suits you and your belief system, it may be the minimum effective dose of estrogen. It may be that you want to go for supraphysiological levels, knowing that you're balancing it to progesterone and you can metabolize it. Will focus on your progesterone. And a strategy that I see people using quite successfully is to use a cycled approach to progesterone. But if anxiety is in the mix, to be using a minimum of 100 milligrams daily from day 0 to day 28. And then from day 14 onwards in the luteal phase, post-ovulation, to actually add in an extra 100 milligrams. Now, bear in mind, these doses are not intended as medical advice. It's an invitation to explore your dosages to suit you. Now, this additional 100 milligrams, depending on how you respond to progesterone, because there are people who process it through the glutamate receptors, others who process it and it goes to the GABA receptors. Ultimately, we want to be hitting those nice calming GABA receptors. Is you can try taking this additional dose or the whole dose vaginally. And the benefits of that is that it won't be metabolized through the liver. It will stay relatively local, so it will protect you against things like uterine fibroids and endometriosis, but also you will get this gentle systemic effect. Now, everybody responds differently to this, so please remember, this is not medical advice. This is based on a decade of experience of helping people with hormones. Think of me as a hormone health coach, and experiment with your dosage safely under the auspices or the guidance of your primary care practitioner to find a dosage that really works for you. And if somebody's had a partial hysterectomy, for instance, and then been told you don't need progesterone because you don't have a uterus, I would really invite you to find somebody who will support you in that, because getting this estrogen to progesterone balance is essential when it comes to managing anxiety and for getting the benefits of estrogen without them being proliferative and promoting weight gain. So let's recap. Dutch test, see your levels of estrogen to progesterone, ensure they're relatively balanced, and experiment with increasing progesterone and even trying the application of progesterone vaginally. It has incredible benefits and should lift some of the heavier rocks around anxiety. That is critical. So please start there. But then you're going to say, But hang on, getting a Dutch test and getting those results and then being seen, that could take 3 to 4 weeks. My anxiety is becoming precipitous. What can I do about it? Well, let's look at some diet and lifestyle things and supplements and peptides that you can put into place straight away. So point one, the first thing, caffeine can create anxiety in some people depending on how they metabolize it and the types of coffee that you are actually consuming. For instance, if it's Robusta rather than Arabica. So let's just do R versus Arabica. Bear in mind that if you're getting this wakefulness in the middle of the night, it can be multiple things. And that can be this wakeful anxiety. It can be, and this is super, super common. It can be lack of progesterone. And that lack of progesterone doesn't necessarily mean you're slap bang in the middle of perimenopause. It might be an artificially suppressed progesterone, which is being created by an excess cortisol lifestyle. So there's not enough progesterone, it could be excess cortisol. And these two things go hand in hand. Remember, if your sex hormones are a theatre, then cortisol is the stage manager advising in the wings and directing the plot. Cortisol has so much impact on your sex hormones. It surprises me that we're not speaking about it more. And this excess cortisol can lead to intestinal permeability, which is another really huge factor in anxiety. And we're going to unpack foods in just a moment. So bear with me. This is going to be super empowering. So what can you do about this? Well, as you're going through your day, you've rewatched the sleep module, you've monitored your caffeine quality and quantity, you've remembered that green tea in some people, whilst it is super beneficial and it has lots of anti-cancer compounds, we really like the EGCG in it, it can create this 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock wakefulness, especially if you're consuming it late in the afternoon thinking you're doing your polyphenol count a benefit. So review this, because this without this isn't going to work. Consider this a jigsaw, and when you complete these pieces, you'll be slowly vanquishing anxiety. It might be you try one thing and it works instantly because you've just got a single cause of your anxiety. It might be multiple causes. So be patient with yourself and look at this as just a blueprint or a mandala that you're just going to color in and complete as a project and an investment of kindness to yourself. We get so much feedback on, wow, I feel so much better, we've got rid of anxiety, and it's people following this approach. So please stay with me. So we've talked about not enough progesterone. We've talked about excess cortisol. We've talked about this excess cortisol creating intestinal permeability, where, for instance, the intestinal lining, which is really thin and very fragile, it's designed to absorb things, interact with the outside world and bring in nutrients. It becomes open, and then bacteria covered in something called LPS, lipopolysaccharides, can come into your bloodstream and creates rampant inflammation. So why is this relevant to anxiety, Rowan? Well, if you've got intestinal permeability, it's highly likely that you've got a blood-brain barrier breach, and that is super linked, correlated to anxiety. And for those of you who go out, for instance, and might have some alcohol and then have some gluten and have some takeaway foods and then wake up in the middle of the night feeling like you're having a panic attack, well, this is exactly it. Why? Because gluten tricks your body into releasing something called zonulin. Zonulin opens this intestinal wall and all of these LPS come into your bloodstream. Hey presto, anxiety. So remember. And the way I always like to look at this is just focus on this as a single project for a couple of weeks. Remove everything you need to remove, add everything in, and slowly then take out things one by one and just see what's your trigger. So if you look at gluten, that's obviously a significant cause of intestinal permeability and other light grains. Just kick it to the curb for a bit and don't replace it with gluten-free products. Replace it with starchy vegetables, for instance. Alcohol needs to be kicked to the curb. There's few things create anxiety as much as alcohol. Whether it's the guilt or the programming, I don't know. But people waking up in the middle of the night with tachycardia, it's typically around progesterone, cortisol, and alcohol. So manage all of these compassionately. The next part in here is please watch foods which might have MSG in it, monosodium glutamate. Why? That monosodium glutamate, which is designed to give that beautiful, wow, sumptuous umami flavor when you can't stop eating, well, that is super stimulatory and that will donate glutamate to your glutamate receptors. And this is one of the reasons you wake up after you've eaten Chinese food in the middle of the night and have some bad sleep and MSG. There's times when my partner and I have been out for a lovely meal, been blown away at how fantastic it is, only to wake in the middle of the night in this anxiety panic attack. And we've both looked at each other and went, have you been MSG'd? Yeah, MSG'd. I knew it was too good to be true. That food was amazing. So just be attentive to the MSG monster. So, oh my goodness me. Cool. We've covered intestinal permeability, we've talked about alcohol, we've talked about MSG. It's a really good idea to actually do a little bit of a gut reboot as well to seal and heal that gut. We will do a YouTube video on that soon. But one of the things you can do to really enhance that and close those tight junctions is, one, take something called Megaspore Biotic, which is frankly just an amazing probiotic. It's spore-based, it's highly resistant to your own stomach acid, and I've seen it work time and time again for clients. So please consider that a go-to, Megaspore Biotic. The other thing, just looking in diet, is are you having enough carbohydrates? Because one thing I've really seen over the last 12, 15 years of looking after athletes and poker players and lots and lots and lots of perimenopausal and menopausal clients is quite often we get hooked into the low carb paleo way of eating, or even, dare I say it, keto, burn fat while you're asleep. And what we're seeing 20 years in to the keto phenomena and the bulletproof diet, which me and some other practitioners jokingly rename the bullet wound diet, is for exactly this, is when your blood sugar is too low, especially when you're asleep, this can promote a really almost violent nighttime waking where you're and this is a primordial defense response. It's your brain sensing you do not have enough blood sugar to get through the night, so it raises your cortisol quite dramatically to start a process called gluconeogenesis. And gluconeogenesis, big word, what it means is your body is breaking down protein to create glucose to see you through the night. And with lots of performance athletes, especially those who are like pre-competition or they're going to do something on stage, or simply somebody in perimenopause trying for a solution to get rid of those 12 pounds which just unsuspectingly crept up on them, they've gone too low carb. And there's a couple of issues with that. One is it's not sustainable longer term. You may get some benefits shorter term, but what that's going to do is it's going to ride your adrenal axis, your HPA axis. I know because I ruined mine doing something very similar 15 years ago. So what this is doing is triggering your cortisol super high, suppressing progesterone, and the irony is you're then cannibalizing your own gut lining, because typically that's the most available source of easy to break down amino acids, creating intestinal permeability. So hang on, we've all been sold into this super low carb lifestyle and how it's neuroprotective. Not so much. And what happens is it's overexpressing your cortisol, it's cannibalizing your gut lining, it puts you into a catabolic state, and it's suppressing progesterone. And we see this time and time again, is that when we introduce really functional sources of glucose, like berries for breakfast and structured carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates after training and or in the evening, a few hours before bed, is that suddenly perimenopause symptoms start to alleviate and get better. And this is really cool. Sometimes people start cycling again, and we have at least 2 or 3 people a week in the clinic who say, is this normal? My inflammation's gone down and my cortisol's better and I've started cycling again. I thought I was in menopause. And this is it. This is our cortisol stage manager suppressing progesterone's role because cortisol's been overexpressed. Fascinating, right? So with this, remember, are you, and I'm just going to write the letters, forgive me, too low carb? And no, you're not going to suddenly put on weight if you start eating structured carbohydrates. In fact, if you start using berries for breakfast with some essential amino acids in, pretty much on waking, so you don't go into this fight or flight, starvation, intermittent fasting state, then what you'll find is you improve something called glucose transport. Glucose transport is your body's ability to take a glucose molecule out of your serum and put it into tissue, into muscle. This is gold. Why? Why is this relevant to you? Because this is the key to building lean muscle. Otherwise, that glucose bimbles around. You've created insulin resistance by being too low carb for too long. And then your body's in this insulin resistant, low carb, low glucose state where you're triggering loads of cortisol and your body's breaking itself down to create other sources of glucose which you're not providing to it. I love when people join our program and they start having the berry breakfast with some essential amino acids and maybe a banana thrown in there, blended up, and it's something they can chug-a-lug and feel really satiated. There's loads of benefits to this because one, these berries help seal and heal intestinal permeability. Two, these soluble fibers in berries actually promote your longevity bacteria. So let's just put longevity bacteria in there. Three, what happens is your insulin resistance starts to be reversed. And that means, wow, all of these amazing sugars actually start helping to promote lean muscle mass, and people naturally get leaner. If you don't believe me, I challenge you to do it. Do the berry breakfast with some essential, couple of big scoops of essential amino acids in there for a month and see what happens to your visceral fat. We'll do a separate video on that. Let's go back to anxiety, because we've not finished thwarting it yet. So, estrogen to progesterone, managing caffeine, cutting out alcohol, gluten and other grains. Temporarily, it may be that you're super tolerant to them, but the key here is we need to seal and heal intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut. You're going to avoid stimulating yourself with monosodium glutamate or creating intestinal permeability and wonky neurotransmitters with alcohol. And you're going to nourish your body with some really functional, complex carbohydrates so that you're not breaking down your own tissue. This alone will nail about 85% of cases of anxiety. But let's be complete. Let's empower you with a holistic approach. So what else can you do? So from a supplement perspective, ensure you aren't using some magnesium. Now, the magnesium I like is magnesium threonate. It's very neurally active, it's exceptionally potent, and I love this in a sleep stack to prevent this nighttime waking. So magnesium threonate, and then obviously I would stack that with melatonin around 3 to 5 milligrams. There's some other things you can do around that if you're looking at a sleep stack specifically for anxiety. I would even experiment with up to a tablespoon of super high quality honey. Now, honey is not going to suddenly make you put on weight. Quite the opposite. It actually improves insulin resistance, improves glucose transport. It's antibacterial. It's really effective against candida. And it's great for getting you to sleep through the night and stopping this nighttime anxiety wakefulness, because it has a very slow digesting sugar molecule. In fact, it's a disaccharide called isomaltulose. Mother Nature delivers once again. Thank you, bees. What if we want to get a little bit more advanced? Well, something else you can take is L-theanine. Now, ironically, L-theanine is a product which is found in green tea, but because there are other things in green tea for some people, myself included, can be super stimulatory. If I so much as look at green tea at 7 o'clock in the morning, as sure as eggs are eggs, at 2 o'clock the next morning, I'm going to be awake like, hoo, hoo, ha, hoo. Not a great feeling. So taking it in supplement form, and you can even supplement that with GABA. And Quicksilver, those clever scientists at Quicksilver, golly, I wish I'd thought of this. They produce a GABA L-theanine liposomal formula. Now, just a quick note on this. Liposomal formulas are expensive, but in my opinion, they are totally worth it, especially when it comes to banishing anxiety. Why? Why, Rowan, why? Well, if you've got anxiety and you've been having excess cortisol for a while, well, it's highly likely that you're in something called cellular danger response. And that's when your body just locks down. It doesn't really absorb nutrients. You've got wonky energy. You can't lose body fat. We see so many clients in perimenopause in this state, and particularly if they've been doing things like high intensity interval training, if they've been doing cold plunging, on top of low carb, on top of various other things and not enough sleep and intermittent fasting. The L-theanine GABA liposomal I was talking about works in cell danger response because it's wrapped in these tiny, tiny nanospheres of lipids, of fats, which are the same types of fats in your cell wall. So it increases the likelihood of it going through the cell wall, even in cell danger response, and allowing you to get these nutrients in. GABA is a really relaxing neurotransmitter. It's the opposite to the glutamate receptor, which is activated by monosodium glutamate. Okay, what else can you do? Well, a big one here is a peptide. Now, bear in mind, peptides are not FDA approved. They're research-only chemicals. Most of the research is actually being done on animals. There is some research that's been done on humans. I've been using them successfully for 7 years. If you decide to do so, that's your choice. The one I really like for anxiety is something called Salang. And the form that I really like it in is N-acetyl salangamidate. And the reason I like that particular one is because it's more bioavailable and it lasts for longer. Now, what I do is I buy that from my preferred peptide supplier, And what I do is I put it into a nasal spray, and I've seen astonishing benefits from people using that as a nasal spray. It works magnificently with this. You wouldn't want to take that too late in the day. In fact, I would stop and I would keep it to a couple of sprays experimentally up until lunchtime. Why? Because it can really improve focus, verbal recall, nootropic performance ultimately. It is a nootropic. It does enhance and help banish brain fog. So it enhances neural activity. Another issue that we see in perimenopause, so it can be a massive win. But one of the big things, in fact, there's two big things to address here. One is non-native electromagnetic frequencies, often presented to us as a wow, such a benefit of modern society. Check me out with my Bluetooth earbuds. Holy moly, these Bluetooth earbuds, AirPods, and the data coming out around neural activity, what it's doing to neural mitochondria, how it's disrupting your parasympathetic nervous dominance, how it's increasing sympathetic reaction. If somebody puts Bluetooth on in the car, I can feel it. I'm super sensitive to it. So please be aware that whilst you cannot see these things, they are ultimately invisible waveforms, the forms of light that you cannot see. They are interacting with you, and you really need to protect yourself from these. I actually, if I'm going out, I'm going to pick up a friend from the airport tomorrow, I always use some of the Leela quantum tech, whether it's the capsule or whether I actually even travel with the quantum block, which is just behind me in the car. I'm not paid to say that. They do not sponsor me. We do not receive an affiliate code from them. I have noticed a dramatic difference in our sleep and actually in lowering anxiety, even in our pets, just by having one in the house, because we've got a small power line next to us. It's not a big one, you can't hear it, it's a small rural one, but that was enough to change it. And in fact, when I used to look after the poker players, lots of them came to me with headaches and brain fog because they spent so much time online, and they were all using Bluetooth earpods and they were being subjected to Wi-Fi. So limit your exposure to Bluetooth, limit your exposure to Wi-Fi, get out first thing in the morning and ground yourself. This is not mumbo jumbo. This is scientifically proven. It's one of the things you can do to help recover from jet lag, to receive negative electrons from the Earth's surface, which is just incredible. It's probably one of the biggest sources of antioxidants, and it's free. It will help reset your circadian rhythm, bearing in mind you have 37 trillion cells. All of them have light sensing circadian activated circuits. Do them a favor and just limit yourself to this kind of pollution or exposure. The next thing, and this is the final bit, I promise. I love this. Honestly, we've got rid of nearly everybody's anxiety doing this. So follow this. This is your beautiful blueprint to defeating anxiety and taking control of your own biology, is breathing. And I'm not going to go down the breath work route. You need to do breath work, you need to do breath raves, you need to... That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about using breathing actively and consciously to change your sympathetic nervous state. If you're in a stressful situation, or you've been in an altercation, a fight with someone, somebody said something unpleasant, somebody's cut you up in traffic, or whatever it is, just by actually counting in for 4, inhaling, holding for 4, exhaling, and key to this is through the nose, not through the mouth. Holding for 4, repeating that 3 times, or even increasing that for counts of 5. So if you think inhale 5, hold 5, exhale 5, hold 5, that's 20 seconds. You do that 3 times, well, there's a minute. If you do that 3 times, there's 3 minutes. I virtually guarantee that you will have changed your biology. There is an incredible correlation between mouth breathing and anxiety. Why? Mouth breathing is actually bringing in too much oxygen. It's driving down your levels of carbon dioxide, which counterintuitively is essential for smooth muscle flow. And that's why if somebody's having a panic attack, if you hold a brown paper bag to their mouth, their breathing slows down. Why? There's less oxygen, their carbon dioxide levels raise, and all of a sudden they feel calmer. So this is key. Box breathing, 5, 5, 5, 5, times 3, times 3. If you do that 3 times a day, you can really change your biology. You can totally bring down your cortisol. And if you're doing this for even 5 minutes before bed, as you switch off the Wi-Fi, as you're taking your magnesium, you will fall into a deeper sleep. If you're switching off your tracking devices, you're getting the Bluetooth off your Oura Ring or your Whoop, you're switching it off. You can still use them, but only switch them on when you're downloading the data. Oh, Rowan, you promised this was your last point. Do check on your Dutch your methylation. And this is the second bar in your estrogen metabolism report, okay? This is really important. Why? Because lots of people love to follow all of these things, and they maybe, this is quite rare because most people undermethylate. So if you've had MTHFR, methyl tetrahydrate folate reductase, and they say, oh, I've got the MTHFR. Don't worry, I've never seen anyone not being able to improve that through diet and lifestyle and stress. So it might be that you are over-methylating, and that is one of the symptoms of over-methylation, is if you've been taking lots of B vitamins. And in fact, I had a client on the West Coast, and when we unpacked her supplement stack, it'd been like a private formulary that created this amazing stack which was going to help her defeat MTHFR. And I think it was something like 3,000 times the recommended amount for various B vitamins. Taking that out, game changing, all panic stopped. So be aware of your methylation. Methylation in the optimum zone, exactly where you want it. Too little is bad because it leads to poorly transcripted cells and an inability for you to break down estrogen. Too much of it means your estrogen levels are going to drop and you will get anxiety from excess methylation. That was the last point. Anxiety is going to be a thing of the past. And I know this because we've been doing this for 12, 15 years, and we've seen so many people say, wow, and you know what? It was actually the monosodium glutamate, or just by changing my caffeine to 15 hours before my sleep, or just by taking that extra 100 milligrams of progesterone vaginally, I found myself just feeling a lot better. The N-acetyl-C-lankamidate can be a game changer, but you have so many big wins on this board. It's brilliant. I find it so empowering to see people and to hear them say, oh, this has changed my life. Anxiety is a thing of the past. Please, please share your feedback. This is something that can change the course of your life and increase the quality and vibrancy of every one of your days. There was a time when I was super ill that I was getting these unprecedented panic attacks. I could barely function. I was embarrassed. I'd be on like a tube in central London with this big responsible job and getting paid fantastic amounts of cash. And suddenly I'd be in these waves of panic and I didn't know what was happening. and I had broken sleep and intestinal permeability, and I'd been exposed to gluten and maybe been out with a client the night before and had loads of alcohol and had low magnesium levels and even had low vitamin Bs because of the alcohol. Please share with me your feedback. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I really hope you put some of this in place and it changes your life. Sending you the best of energy. Thanks for watching.